Hey, welcome into Sports Map. I'm Brandon Strange playing the part of John Granado today. That means I do rub my hands together and go, hey, Lance. But before I do that, make sure you like the video, hit subscribe on the channel, and all that good stuff. Hey, Lance, you're down at Senior Bowl, so I appreciate you taking some time to join us. We wanted to talk with you because this Brian Flores stuff is obviously, everyone's talking about it. You're our resident NFL expert. I just wanted to get your thoughts on some of this stuff. And for those who have been living under a rock for the past, couple of days, Brian Flores suing the NFL for a number of different reasons, not the least of which is discrimination, allegedly being offered to tank being paid to tank. So, Lance, first things first, I guess as it pertains to the Texans, we can safely assume Brian Flores will not be the head coach for the Houston Texans, correct?
Well, I don't know. I don't know how this affects he's had a second interview with the Texans. So I really don't know how that affects his standing with the Texans. It may not have any standing. He may still be a viable candidate with the Texans. It feels like a move that is going to potentially alienate him, however, from some of the potential jobs and opportunities in the league. That's just kind of a guess, but I don't know. It may still, he clearly was one of the candidates. He fits some criteria. He's a former Patriot guy, which we've always felt like Nick Caserio would want to have. He's a guy who comes from a background where he just got done being a head coach and had some success with the Miami Dolphins. So I don't know if we just scratch him off. I'm assuming that the guy is going to be Josh McCown, but Brian Flores, who knows, maybe this gives him a better opportunity to be the head coach of the Texans because it shines a little brighter spotlight. I don't know how that's going to happen, but I do know that it's created quite a stir in the NFL world.
Indeed. And I want to get back to the Texans in just a second, but I want to take a sidebar on the Rudy Rule itself. Like, we know what the intent of the Rudy Rule is, but critics have always said that it set itself up for the potential for token interviews. So in your opinion, how do you think the NFL kind of reconciles that? How do they make sure that minority head coaching candidates get that opportunity without there being a dog and pony show?
It's tough because you don't know the intent of anyone. You can accuse teams of doing that, but you don't really know the intent. So it works both ways. It works with, you can't prove that it's going on, but at the same time, it doesn't necessarily mean that everything is a dog and pony show. I think fundamentally, I think as my brother made this point, he's been a lifelong coach. The best opportunity for minority coaches is to become offensive and defensive coordinators, because a lot of times that's where the next head coaches are chosen from. So I think first and foremost, the best opportunity is to build the ranks of offensive and defensive coordinators with very qualified minority candidates. And then, past that, it's, if you have a rule where you are creating a quota system, you're always going to have, it's going to work both ways. It's going to give certain guys opportunities, but you'll also have the ability to say, well, this wasn't real, or this was a token interview. And it's hard to say when that's accurate and when that's not accurate. So I'm not sure, Brandon, that there's a real clear answer here. I think that it's, I think populating the potential coaching hires with guys who are offensive and defensive coordinators creates more candidates. And so I think that's the best opportunity to do that. It has to be through hiring practices below the head coaching level. But what's interesting is that coaches have always hired coaches that they're comfortable, right? Head coaches. And those coaches are either going to be, sometimes they are guys who look and sound like them, whether they're all black or all white or a mixture. A lot of times, though, it happens with guys that they've been on staffs with before. You want somebody that you think thinks the same way you do about the game, that maybe has a background that you do, and someone you think will have your back. So that's how my dad got hired by Mike Tomlin, a black coach, young guy. He got hired because they were on the same staff at University of Cincinnati. And that was, that happens a lot. So Bruce Arians is a guy who has intentionally hired Todd Bowles at Arizona, because he's a great coordinator, but also Byron Leftwich gave a young guy an opportunity. Harold Godwin, an offensive line coach who became his quote unquote offensive coordinator in the top offensive line coach in Tampa Bay. He has done his job of hiring black coaches because he wants to find good coaches, period, no matter what they look like. But more importantly, he does look at that as an opportunity to help advance the causes by hiring more guys into coordinator type positions and positions of authority, because that's going to be the best way to kind of alter some of the hiring practices.
So I guess if Flores is out of the race here, and I don't know, I wonder if this gives the Texans plausible deniability if they do hire Josh McCown, and they could plausibly say, hey, we were going to hire Flores and then all this happened, and we don't want to bring this distraction on. So I also wonder what the optics of that look like now. Now you've got Flores who's suing, and then now you've got a white candidate who possibly gets the job now who doesn't have any head coaching experience.
Doesn't have coaching experience?
Right. You're right.
No coaching.
That's true, and I guess the Texans' rebuttal to that would be like, well, we gave David Culley a chance, and so it was funny because when I was reading how the Dolphins allegedly offered Flores $100,000 a game to tank, I thought, well, man, that's a deal compared to the $17 million the Texans paid David Culley to help him tank, but that kind of exemplifies the dichotomy of this rebuild, right? Because you want to hire a guy who's ambitious, but he wants to win. That's his record and his reputation on the line. Did the Texans have the right intent with hiring Culley, but maybe got a little bit of too much what they asked for?
No, I don't think so. I mean, he was not a viable head coaching candidate for any other team in the league that had a coaching opening. He had never been a coordinator of any kind. He had never been interviewed, to my knowledge, by any other team. I think they got a guy who, you could surmise that they got him for one of three different reasons. Either number one, he was just a different personality fit and something they needed in the building after Bill O'Brien. I think that's possible, and I think that may have played into it. Number two, I think he is a guy who is going to go along with what needed to be done and allow Nick Caserio more leeway to have control over the organization because he was happy to have the job. I think that could very well play a part in it. And then, the one that you could start to ask yourself about now, and I'm not accusing the Texans of this, but it wouldn't shock me if people started to make this comment. David Culley got 1 year. He got 1 year with a bad roster, and I don't think he was a competent head coach. I think his moves on the field, some of the things he said, really showed that. However, what could be said is, did the Texans set this up where they knew Josh McCown was going to be their head coach in waiting, and they just hired David Culley preemptively as a reason to make it easier to hire? You had it at an African-American candidate. You hire him with the intent of knowing that Josh McCown was going to be your next head coach. I guess the one counter to that is, why the hell would you do a contract that paid David Culley so much money? And that's hard to get around. It doesn't feel like something Nick Caserio would do. It doesn't feel like a situation where Nick says, yeah, we know Josh McCown's our next coach, but let's give David Culley this contract. That seems, ill-fated, unless the owner was the one who hired David Culley and he went and, he made the ultimate decision and said, this is the guy and this is what his agent wants and this is what I'm going to pay him. That's the only other thing that would make sense.
It's so easy to default to Cal being the answer, right? Like that bad contract's all in Cal. Caserio's like, hey, we can do something, lighter with him. And Cal's like, no, he's our guy. Let's give him all the money. So I guess, Lance, I guess my final question is this, are we headed to an announcement of Josh McCown being the next Texans head coach on a news dump Friday?
Could be. Yeah, it could be. It needs to happen. It's kind of crazy that we've got positions usually by the Senior Bowl here in January. The end of January and now into February, the coaching hires are all done. Combine's coming up at the end of the month, into March actually this year. Everything's been pushed back a week. But it's going to be coming up before you know it. Free agency is going to be coming up before you know it. So this is a situation where the Texans really need to have a head coach. Now, the flip side of that coin is we know who runs the team. It's Nick Caserio. So maybe they're not in as big a rush. And if the answer is going to be Josh McCown, maybe it behooves them right now to bring some more guys in. Maybe the Texans, for the window dressing aspect, say, let's get D'Amico Ryans in here. Let's see if, Eric Bieniemy wants to come in and have another interview again this year. Let's see what happens. So it will be interesting to see how the Brian Flores lawsuit shapes, and the news and just the perceptions shape what the Texans do over the next several days.
How much will it change perception if it's not Josh McCown, if it's not Jack Easterby's guy, and it's somebody who is a viable candidate? I wonder if that does give the fan base a little bit more hope and just say, like, okay, maybe we're headed in the right direction. Maybe we can go in a direction.
Hope won't come with a coaching hire. Hope is going to come with draftable players that perform on the field. They're beyond the splashy hire to give hope. Right now, Texans fans probably understand a head coach can't fix all this. It's going to take players. They got to rebuild the roster. So to me, that hope is not really going to fully bloom. Just like with the Astros, it didn't bloom when AJ Hinch was hired. It bloomed whenever you saw young guys coming up and performing. And that's what it's going to take in Houston for the Texans as well.
Well, you heard it here first. Texans need more trash cans. So, hey, Lance, I appreciate the time. We'll talk soon, brother. Appreciate you.